Khal Drogo was never defeated in battle. Not once, not ever. The greatest warlord the Dothraki had ever produced, a man who had never lost a fight, never lost a war, never lost anything, was killed by an infected cut and a witch with a grudge. And that quiet, undramatic death changed the history of Westeros more than any battle ever fought. Because Drogo wasn't just a character, he was a load-bearing wall. Remove him, and almost nothing that follows happens the way you know it. No Dragon Queen. No War of Five Kings the way it happened. No version of Westeros you recognize. Today we pull that wall out and watch what collapses. If you're new here, this is Mereth Tales. Subscribe and hit the bell. This is exactly the kind of video we exist for. One man lives. Everything changes. Let's go. The first thing that changes is Daenerys. The Daenerys we know, the mother of dragons, the breaker of chains, was forged in loss. Drogo's death was the crucible. Walking into his funeral pyre with 3 stone eggs and emerging with 3 dragons was not just a miracle, it was a transformation. She burned away everything she had been and became something entirely new. If Drogo lives, that transformation never happens. The eggs do not hatch. The dragons do not come. Daenerys remains Khaleesi, powerful, beloved, respected within the Khalasar, but without the singular identity that made her a legend. She is still remarkable, but she is not the Dragon Queen. Which raises the question everything else depends on: would Daenerys ever reach Westeros at all? Here is where it gets complicated. Drogo had promised Daenerys the Iron Throne, sworn it in front of his entire Khalasar after Robert Baratheon sent assassins to kill her in Vaes Dothrak. And Drogo, unlike every Dothraki Khal before him, was actually capable of keeping that promise. 100,000 riders, the largest Khalasar in the world. With ships seized from the slaver cities of Essos, a crossing of the narrow sea was not impossible. It was terrifying, but it was not impossible. So imagine it. Khal Drogo lands in Westeros with 100,000 Dothraki. What does the continent do? Robert Baratheon is still alive, drunk, unfit, terrified, but technically king. Tywin Lannister retreats to Casterly Rock and waits, calculating, committing to nothing until he knows who wins. The Starks hold the north, the Tyrells hold the Reach, and the greatest cavalry force the world has ever seen begins burning through the Riverlands. Here is the truth the show asks you to overlook. The Dothraki do not fight like Westerosi armies. They do not march in formation or hold sieges. They sweep. They raid. They are faster and more mobile than anything Westeros has faced, and on open ground, nobody beats Drogo. But castles would stop them cold. The Dothraki had never encountered stone fortifications at scale. Their military culture was built entirely for open-field combat. Speed, shock, terror. Against Harrenhal or Storm's End, they would be lost. Drogo is smart enough to know this, so he does not try to take every castle. He devastates the open countryside. He burns the riverlands. He cuts supply lines and isolates the great houses from each other until someone is forced to come out and fight him on his terms. And when they do, he wins. But then there is the problem of Jon Snow. Jon Snow is still born. He still grows up at Winterfell, unaware of who he really is. Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar, the true heir to the Iron Throne. In the world we know, Jon's identity became the thing that broke Daenerys. The revelation that he outranked her, that her entire claim rested on a foundation someone else could pull away. It isolated her, destabilized her, pushed her toward the burning of King's Landing. In a world where Drogo lives, Daenerys never discovers the truth about Jon. She arrives in Westeros as a Khaleesi, not a queen in her own right. Her claim to the Iron Throne is her husband's promise, not her identity. The tension that destroyed her never exists. Does that mean a better ending? Not necessarily, because Drogo's conquest would not be a gentle one. Here is what the love story obscures. Khal Drogo was a conqueror who enslaved entire peoples. He burned villages. He killed without mercy. His promise to give Daenerys the Iron Throne was not a promise to make Westeros better. It was a promise to take it by any means available. Daenerys spent her years in exile developing a conscience. She freed the Unsullied. She stayed in Meereen to actually govern rather than simply move on. Without those years, without the loss and the slow education in what power costs, she may never have become the breaker of chains. In a world where Drogo lives, does Westeros get a conqueror without conscience? Does Daenerys, kept safe and loved as Khaleesi, never develop the moral framework that made her something more than just another person who wanted a throne? And then there are the White Walkers. The Night King's army marched regardless of who sat in King's Landing. The long night was coming whether Drogo lived or died. In the world we know, the war against the dead was won by Daenerys' dragons, the weapons that actually worked against White Walkers at scale, and by Arya Stark's impossible kill. In a world where Drogo lives, no dragons. Drogo's 100,000 riders would be devastating against human enemies. Against the undead, who feel no fear and cannot be broken, they would be cattle. The long night, in this world, may not have ended the same way. It may not have ended at all. So here is the final question. Is a world where Khal Drogo never died a better world or a worse one? In the short term, better. Drogo lives. Daenerys is loved and powerful. The personal tragedy never happens. In the medium term, catastrophic. A Dothraki invasion without the restraining influence of a Daenerys, shaped by loss, would devastate Westeros. In the long term, possibly fatal. Without dragons, the Night King may have won. The death of Khal Drogo was a private, unnecessary tragedy. A great man killed by an infected cut because he was too proud to treat a wound. But that tragedy made Daenerys into someone who could save the world. And the world needed saving. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to a person is the thing that makes them who they need to become. Drogo died in a tent in the Dothraki Sea, and without that death, the living may not have survived what came next. That is the butterfly effect of one infected cut. One man lived, and the world burned differently. The next what if is even darker. What if Robb Stark had never broken his promise? That story is next.